Lance Sampson is a Canadian R&B artist who goes by the name of Aquakultre, and have a listen to a little bit of this.
City don't give a goddamn about a black man like me, but the city damn near know that it's pretty black man go free.
Okay, so that's a bit of Gallows by Aquakultre, one of many powerful moments off his new album, 1783. This is an album that's tracing the history of black loyalists who came to Nova Scotia after the American War of Independence, Lance being a direct descendant of those first settlers, and each song on this album being deeply rooted in that history. We're going to dig into that history with Elle Jones. Welcome back, Elle.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here. So look, I mean, I know you're a fan of Aquakultre, and you've listened to this new album. So let's start off with your experience with the album and your reaction to it.
Yeah, I think it's a really beautiful connection to what we were just talking about in the last segment with Bad Bunny's Super Bowl show, because we see a lot of the same things working in Lance's album, which is this big historical sweep and using art to not only make a personal statement about his own history, his own family, uncovering your roots, but then also connecting that to these broader political issues, the broader history of Nova Scotia and why that matters in the present. So we see, I think, a lot of the same themes of family and love, but then also why that's political and important in that moment.
Okay, well, look, I mean, we were just listening to a bit of that song on the album, The Gallows. So could you talk to me about the story behind that song and why it would have resonated with you?
Yeah, so this is a really important song, and you hear this refrain, "City don't give a damn about a black boy like me." So his great-grandfather, Daniel Perry Sampson, was the last execution in Nova Scotia, and it's very clear that this was a wrongful conviction. There was an event actually in the law school on Thursday night exploring this. Tim Bousquet from the Halifax Examiner has done a 7-part series. If you want to get a subscription, you can read that. And it's a really classic case of police misconduct, clearly framing him for this. It was 2 young boys were found on the railroad track, and it was very evident they'd been killed in an incident with a train. But the police, after about a month, decided that they were going to convict this black man for the crime. That never happened. It was really an accident. And so apparently there's like 16 pieces of missing evidence. The case is actually now up in front for exoneration. They're hoping it to be the first posthumous removal of a conviction in Canadian history. And so the lawyer, David Steeves, has been working on this case for like decades pro bono. So this song really captures, again, so this is his family experience and the impact that generational trauma had through his family, their search for truth, knowing that this was a wrongful execution and living with that for generations and that fight to bring the truth to light. And so it so anchors this album. We talk about, why is it so important to know your history? Why is African Nova Scotian history so important in Canada and still so overlooked? And why digging into the past and digging into the archive isn't just a static project. It's a project that keeps us moving in this time. So that story, and I encourage people to look at the video for Gallows, and also if you want to donate to continue to help this work go forward, and also inform yourself about other wrongful convictions that are ongoing in Canada as well. So I think it's such an important anchor for this album around what injustice means, and also this beautiful work as a family of restoring your name and restoring the truth.
It is incredible to me that I've never even heard that story. So, I mean, that is so powerful.
And I was very quick on it, so please read the series to get the full story. Yeah.
Well, look, I mean, we're talking about this album that it's rooted in the past, but it's also singing to the present. And I think that really shows up in the opening track. It's called "What Are You Saying?" So let's hear a bit of that now.
What are you saying? What are you?
Very different tempo. Elle, I mean, how are you connecting with that song?
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, "What are you saying?" in Nova Scotia is a very multi-layered phrase. So it can mean like, what are you doing? It's also like an invitation. It can be sexy. So it's really opening the album with an invitation to love, I think, but also this phrase that if you live here, it just means something within community. The way we use it and say it is so flexible. So I think it just opens the album in this beautiful invitation to conversation, invitation to love, which anchors this album again. He said that he started exploring his own history when his daughter was born, and he thought, I'm not going to have the answers to this. I don't know who I am. And then he began going around the province, talking to our elders, looking into the archives, going and talking to his family members who had been waiting to someone to ask, what are you saying? What is it that you know? and finding all these stories and people pulling out music and albums and recordings they had at the church choir. We hear on the album, his family's recording, of his great aunt, I want to say, playing the piano and singing a spiritual, and all of this comes into the album. And, as much as Africa Nova Scotia in recent years has been showing up, and we've talked about Washington Black right here on Commotion, Book of Negroes, as much as there's been more attention, so much is still lost and buried and erased. So that invitation, particularly to our elders, to speak who you are. And that runs through the album. We hear stuff on the number 2 Construction Battalion. He pulls out letters from the archives that were written. We hear about a black doll, a story in his family of a family member who died and left behind a black doll, and he follows that. So we move from this personal history and the very personal relationships right into this grand sweep of African Nova Scotian history, which is also global Black history as well.
Okay. It's amazing because, we're hearing the range even just in those 2 songs that we played, and you're talking about this musical journey through all these influences. So, if What Are You Saying is kind of the beginning of this journey, let's play a little bit of its landing place, the song called Scotia Born.
They knew we'd all survive, and we multiply. I know you heard with Scotia.
So, El, that was Scotia Born by Aquakultre featuring Gary Beals and Haley Smith. I don't have to tell you that. You know that. But, El, what do you think? I mean, we only got about 30 seconds here, but what do you make of this song being the final note that this album goes out on?
Yeah, so we end on this note of survival and joy, right? So as we've traveled through so many awful pieces of our history, executions, the disregard of people that served in the war, the erasure, it ends in this beautiful communal call that you're born here, you have pride, they didn't want you to survive, and you've survived this history, and you keep looking forward and you pass it down to your family. And it ends with people holding up the different records of people from our community. So, as an album, I think this is one of the most important pieces to come out of Africa Nova Scotia. He also plays honor to so many musicians like Faith Nolan, Linda Carvery. There's so many more I can't name. So here that we are in African Heritage Month for us, Black History Month, Black Liberation Month, I think it's such an important call to remember our roots and why that history changes our contemporary life and changes the way Black children live in the world when they understand that.
Well, listen, I am so glad I had you here to walk me through that. So much intention and all that. So thank you so much, El.
Thank you so much for having me.
El Jones is a poet and assistant professor in the Department of Politics at Mount St. Vincent University in Halifax. Aquakultre's new album, 1783, is out now, and he will also be on Q this Wednesday, so don't miss that conversation. And that's it for the podcast today. I'm Radheyan Simonpillai, sitting in for Elamin Abdelmahmoud. I'll see you tomorrow.